get
there
a
we go.
moderator over on the Rumble. Somebody was alleging yesterday that Roxanne was hitting her dog. And I'm like, that is the most ridiculously stupid thing I've ever heard. Because as anybody who's followed the Colonel for any period of time, she's got a young puppy, and he's absolutely adorable in the light of her life.
So I am going to be 100% honest with you. This Maverick is his name. My husband was supposed to be watching the dog, and he kept jumping on me. So he likes to jump on whatever side of your, like I'm on a like an L-shaped couch, and he kept jumping on me, and I was like shoving him away. I did not hit my dog, but I did push my dog away. His claws on his paws are the sharpest because they're little puppy claws. And I've got like marks down. I've got scratches on my hand. He's a little rambunctious. And
Maverick.
Yes. Hey, don't call him. Bridget, what are you doing?
Oh, you're up on Rumble, by the way. Everything is up and running.
Okay. All right.
You've got sound and video.
All right. There we go. Now, let me go find my place again. Good. All right. So, we ended up yesterday with we went through the entire beginning of the club, the 1001 Club, the World Wildlife Fund, how it was created, who created it, and basically you've got a bunch of royal clowns out of the international syndicate, like Prince Philip and Bernhard of the Netherlands, and all of the literally everybody in the syndicate. So you've got the people that are in charge of General Electric, Archer Daniels, all of the big pesticide companies, and etc. So you kind of get the idea of who we're dealing with here. These people, and we talked about Khan, the guy that did the eco-friendly hotel, in air quotes, big eye roll, that ran the back out of the crater. So that kind of gets us up to where we're at. None of this is real. This green thing with the World Wildlife Fund, just like with climate change and everything else, they're all bullshit lies. All it is a major wealth transfer from all of us to all of them repeatedly for decades. So that's basically what we talked about yesterday in a nutshell. I also brought up the fact that where this got real for me, all of this stuff is important, but it's not what I do. I don't normally deal with World Wildlife Fund or other NGOs. My expertise is dissecting Operation Gladio and the paramilitary activity that went on as part of Operation Gladio with coups and stuff like that. Because that's basically what I'm well versed in as far as my experience goes. However, when I first, and I don't mean I mean Bridget and Liza and I started talking way back when, months ago, about the World Wildlife Fund, there was something about it in the quid pro quo with overthrowing a government that kind of brought it under the umbrella. And so we did a quick look under the hood. We found the Huxley guy and all of the people that, flew over Africa and goes, oh, look, this is where all the game is. So we want that to be a national park kind of garbage. We found all of that. What we didn't find is the actual operation it was associated with. We did find the trading off of World Bank loans and IMF loans to these newly installed CIA dictators. We found that. We found that they were offering to give them money in exchange for their resources. We found that. But we didn't find it associated with any one country or operation, like the fingerprints, until real recently. And I bought the book Panda Leaks because when I first read about this guy, and there's a couple of guys, this guy doesn't post on, he is on X, but he doesn't post hardly anything. The guy that wrote it, and the guy that wrote it is Wilfred Huisman, Huismann. And I went through his X account. He has some excellent information, but like I said, he hardly ever posts. So some of the stuff that I read about him online got me to thinking, if anybody, because he travels to all of these locations. And while I don't expect him to know Operation Gladio by name, just like with the guy who expertise was in Indonesia, he doesn't use it by name, but he describes it to a T. And I'm like, what's the chance of this guy doing the same? So I bought the book. It came probably about a week ago, and I've not been able to put it down because he gives us the operations. He talks specifically about them launching attacks from South Africa into Angola, into Tanzania, into Rhodesia. And so he really put, and he did it not even knowing what he was doing. He did it as a result of saying that these people were basically using these same national parks systems in South Africa that was thrown along the borders so they could launch the attacks into these other areas, more from a wildlife perspective, in the fact that they were trafficking the ivory tusk and the rhino parts and stuff like that. Not so much because, of course, that's not his expertise, the paramilitary part of it. He just basically touches on that. And so that was kind of the final T crossing for me, that the WWF, much like the WEF and the, as Bridget mentioned yesterday, UNESCO, all of these things are a all hands on deck, full court press against us. This is literally, if you were on a football field, their linebackers against our linebackers, but we're not even playing the game. We don't even know we're at a game. So they have all of these, 400-pound linebacker guys that are bullying us basically off the field so that they can have the entire field for themselves. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then, of course, as you guys know, the one, how would I call that? What would I call that? The one kind of short fuse that I have, because it takes a whole lot to get me excited about stuff. The one short fuse that I do have is when people, like we talked about yesterday, like the people that are obviously in the international syndicate that have made bank off of us, turns around and spits in our face by saying something like, the leadership in Africa sucks because, they're African, and they need us Westerners to come run their country because they're not capable of doing it, which is a paraphrase of what Eric Prince said. That's the one thing that just sends me over the top, literally. So Where we're going to start tonight is the fact that there was a documentary that was done by Kevin Dowling called The Elephant Man. And the documentary revealed poachers in Africa that slaughtered 1 million elephants. He had gotten those numbers from the WWF. He began doubting the information that he was being fed by the WWF. Where would tribal woods people, now keep in mind, these are people that have cows, right? These are who lives in these woods. They don't kill elephants. They eat their cow. Where would they get guns to kill 1 million elephants? Where would they get the ammo to kill 1 million elephants? They could probably get it from Israel, but that's a whole nother subject. The guy, Kevin Dowling, he finishes the project, but he's kind of thinking he's getting bamboozled here. And he decided to go to Africa to check things out without the film crew or the company that he had been working for. In 1992, British ITV aired the results of Downing's trip called 10 Pence and the Panda. So 10, the number 10, Pence, P-E-N-C-E, in the Panda. It was the first critical exam ever of the WWF. It aired, and it was immediate. It aired one time, and it was immediately taken and stuck in a vault somewhere, if not trashed altogether. It's never been seen since. This was basically a cleanup job by the WWF, having paid somebody off at the station. And basically, there was later on something called the Phillipson report that Dowling also talked about. Dowling said that basically the WWF was misappropriating the funds, and we already proved that. They do these campaigns and then none of the money goes. It's like the Red Cross, you know, they go to the Las Vegas shooting or Oklahoma and they do a drive or the hurricane, and then none of the money actually goes to those people. None. They've got billions and billions of money in reserve, and the people whose the money was raised for don't get the money. They're doing the exact same thing with animals. It's called the WWF. Dowling also presented a thing called the Phillipson report, which was an audit commissioned in 1987. So, I mean, it's years old, by the WWF. It was requested by Anton Rupert. Now, that's the Cartier millionaire guy that lives, or billionaire guy that lives down in South Africa. He decided he wanted to know what was going on inside the WWF, and he had the right to ask for an audit because he was actually paying out of his paycheck or his checkbook for the salary of the WWF general director personally, not out of his business, him personally. That was his contribution to the 1001 Club. So he wanted an audit. The audit was never supposed to be seen outside of the WWF. And it was basically devastating. It proved that the WWF produced few, if any, results as far as saving animals. There were accusations of colonialism, you think. The WWF was accused of discrimination throughout Africa. The report said that the financial conduct was appalling, and Prince Philip, then the president of the WWF, changed the financial evidence to leave much to be desired. Okay, so this is important. So the actual auditors used the word, quote unquote, appalling for the financial conduct. Prince Philip's made them edit their own audit to say, quote, leaves much to be desired. Philipson continued, quote, a diligent auditor set among the project account files in Switzerland would surely open a cupboard full of skeletons. Those were his own words. No record of allocation of funds, no proof of projects were ever done. Prince Philip wrote a letter to the WWF General Director, Charles de Haas. Let me spell his last name, D-E space H-A-E-S. Quote, I had no idea that it might land us in such a pickle. Whatever we do with it, we are bound to get into trouble. If we don't publish it in full, we are bound to be accused of trying to cover up something. You think? The report was 208 pages long, and in the end, only 9 pages were ever distributed to the executive committee. Philipson assessed that the WWF campaign to save the pandas, quote, the WWF made no serious attempt to successfully implement its kind of program. And then there's a space. Donors would be dismayed to discover that their capital contributions is basically a complete write-off. Dowling discovered some even more interesting information about Operation Lock. Now, you guys have to tell me, doesn't that sound like something that we're very familiar with? Because what NGO actually calls its activities by a military name? Operation Lock. In 1987, the WWF contracted with the British private security company KAS. And guess what? KAS looks a whole lot like Eric Prince's Blackwater. Commonly referred to as a private military company, they trace their origin, they being KAS, back to a guy that was in the SAS. And if you remember the SAS is who set up Britain's stay-behind units way back in the day, the Jedburghs. So directly tied to Operation Gladio, the guy that sets up this KAS. And so in 1965, who under the leadership of the founder of the SAS, David Sterling is the guy's name, and he worked with John Woodhouse. They founded together a company called WatchGuard International as a private company. And basically it would contract out security and military. So think of this as the CIA setting up In-Q-Tel or paying Eric Prince or any of the other front companies the CIA has. That's the way you need to think of this. The company's first assignment was to go to Yemen, where UK played an active role in creating the current mess that we're in Yemen, by the way. This is basically MI6's privatized company. Sterling was active in the Iranian government, which turned, and this is just hysterical to me because again, it's all of this stuff coming back. So remember when we did Iran and I told you that the UK tried to coup the new prime minister first and they screwed it all up and they got kicked out of Iran and their embassy closed? Yeah, that's this guy here. And then they had to call with their hat in their hand, the CIA, and say, hey, could you come do this for me? Because their new prime minister in Iran had basically told BP to lock the door on their way out and get the hell out of Iran because they'd been taking 86 cents of every dollar and giving Iran 14 cents for their oil. Yeah. So the guy that effed up that coup is Sterling here. Just so in case you wanted to know that part. He also operated in Zambia and Sierra Leone, providing training teams and advising on security matters. So he's basically an Otto Skorzeny going around training terrorists. Sterling also organized deals to sell weapons to military personnel in other countries for operations. So he's an arms dealer too. He worked for the Gulf states with weapons supplies and training. Also, he was instrumental in the failed overthrow of Omar Gaddafi in 1971. This guy sucks at his job. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. At least Otto Skorzeny killed everybody that he was supposed to kill. This guy really sucks. So clearly, KAS was an arms trafficker for the UK, as well as a Gladio paramilitary guy. Supposedly, the company was hired to help stop ivory trafficking. Yeah, that's what it might say on a piece of paper somewhere. That's not what they were doing. In 1996, Nelson Mandela appointed a commission to investigate criminal activity under the guise of nature conservatory. Judge Mark Klein, who led the investigation, discovered that apartheid South Africa government had secretly organized mass slaughter of elephants and rhinos in neighboring black-governed countries like Angola, with the sole purpose of destabilizing the countries and making them look bad. Strategy of tension, anyone? They wanted to damage the public credibility so that they could have a talking point that went something like this. The blacks can't manage their own, which is almost verbatim what Eric Prince said on his podcast. Wonder whose talking points those are. This made a place like South Africa's Kruger National Park look very appealing to people like this KAS organization. There were no stage slaughters. There were no stage slaughters there, so the WWF used that as an example park. So basically, you know, in the white country called South Africa, their national parks don't have slaughtered animals in them. Only the blacks do. What they didn't tell anybody was it was the whites going to slaughter the blacks' elephants. That's how criminal these people are. The warehouse that belonged to the South African Military Secret Service, basically they're Gladio people, they're private cops. Well, it's more kind of like their CIA, for lack of a better word, had used the warehouses on that national park to store the elephant tusk, and depending on which witness that went to a truth commission later on, there were on average usually about 3,000 pairs of tusks in there at a time. The investigators interviewed a guy by the name of Mike Richards. He was an agent for the South African Secret Police. He was an undercover plant in the WWF mercenary group meant to keep it under control. So in other words, this KAS organization and others like it, this was a CIA agent that's embedded in the group just to make sure they didn't go too far. I don't know what's too far. I mean, they mined and blew up elephants, so I don't know what their too far is, but that's what he was doing there. So it's kind of like the FBI being embedded in the Gretchen Whitmer case, that kind of scenario. So that's what this Mike Richards guy did. He swore that Operation Lock had been, quote unquote, advantageous because the network needed for collection and collation of information concerning endangered species and wildlife products takes on the same format as an infrastructure which is needed for collections and coalition of intelligence. Well, duh, you're running a military operation here to destabilize the another country. Of course, it's going to look just like a military operation. But they went on and said, yeah, but we're kind of doing it only because these people are anti-South African. Well, I wonder why they're anti-South African. You're setting them up. Of course they're anti-South African. They're not anti-white. They're anti-South African because you're effing with them. So, Dowling's research started where the previous investigation had stopped. Dowling was certain only portions of the report had been published. Mandela didn't want to make it public that the WWF was aware of the dealings of the former apartheid regime because he wanted to get along with them. He was sucking up to them. He was getting his own handouts from both Great Britain and Prince Bernhard. They were quote unquote friends. Other papers began to confirm Dowling's claim. The WWF paramilitary company, KAS, was aware of the animal slaughter and that it was orchestrated by South Africa. The colonel that was in charge of this thing, Colonel Ian Crook, Crooke, the KA and the KAS signed a secret contract for him and his men about South Africa's involvement in the slaughter of animals to destabilize the black-led countries under the strategy of tension method. The mercenaries were given false documents to ease their movement throughout Africa. Now, that harkens back to Agenter Press. So if you guys remember when we did Portugal, they have facilities to get fake passports, fake documents, fake everything, fake histories, fake families. So basically, this is saying that one of the things that they were given is the fake documents that would have made. So if people think, oh, they were just in South Africa running across the Angola border, that's not true. They had movement throughout basically all of the southern part of Africa, country to country to country, using fake documents. So, one participant, a guy by the name of Craig Williamson, is on record admitting he handed false papers to Colonel Crook and had them since 1987. That allowed them to travel all over Southern Africa. The KAS headquarters was in Pretoria and then Johannesburg. Craig Williamson, the former, quote unquote, former officer of the South African police, exposed as a spy and an assassin for South Africa in 1980. Williamson was involved in events involving state-sponsored terrorism, including overseas bombings, burglaries, kidnappings, assassins, and propaganda. So basically, he's a CIA agent for South Africa, and he's part of their Gladio program. So I need to grab my next thread. Bridget, you want to go over what you put up in the nest there?
Yes. So far we've got, what a lot of I've done is just how they were caught essentially slaughtering the locals. That is their, they were caught, the World Wildlife Fund, funding and essentially encouraging, and they were found by everyone, including they went in front of the U.S. Congress to explain how they were funding these park, what they call park rangers, but these were military. I mean, these are not the way we think of them in the United States. These are militant groups that were slaughtering all of the people that would originally had owned land, that they came in and essentially just decided, okay, here's the border, that we're going to make this now a conservation ground. And actually, there was a really good video I'm going to try and post up in there that Cousin It found, that a man reported on it, where, and he shows there's an invisible line right here on this side of the road, and everybody's standing on the other side. And one family had actually a retarded boy that accidentally stumbled across the line and went out into the field. Now, there is no sign, there is no gates, there's no fences, there's nothing. And they shot him down in cold blood. There was no warning. These people are the judge, jury, and in the end, they talked about how many locals had been gunned down over the years. And then they decided they were going to expand the park. And when they expanded the park, they came in with bulldozers and wiped out these people's homes and slaughtered and beat anyone who happened to speak out and try and fight back against losing everything they owned, everything they had. And they were essentially told that they were not important, that the rhinos were important. The one-horned rhinos were way more important. They said, we've been hunting, and we are the number one people protecting these rhinos for generations. We worship the rhinos. They are part of our culture. They're something we love, not something we want to kill. But it didn't matter. And like the Colonel had brought up in yesterday's post, they often do this. And actually, by removing the native groups that live and manage for generations, populations of small animals have gone crazy, where they're left unchecked, and the animals end up overgrazing areas. There is no longer any culling of any of these other animals that also live in. And these people are in tiny towns that this is their whole life. These aren't people that can go to the grocery store. There is no grocery store. They hunt their food. They take what they need. These aren't the people who are slaughtering. But in the same respect, if a judge over in Europe, or a family and a man and his son want to go hunt a zebra, they will take their money and take them over there and allow them to hunt. Essentially, they are creating a situation for them to get more money. And then on top of it, they advertise all the time to try and get you to send your money in for them to be able to slaughter these aborigines, these locals, these natives, and so on. And it truly is heartbreaking. Anyway, they were caught. They were caught dead to rights, and nothing was ever done. Just like it seems to always happen with these Operation Gladios.
Okay, so that's a great overview, and I'm glad that you found some other corroborating evidence, because again, this is so important, and not that we need confirmation of how hypocritic these people are, but one of the things that I keep telling myself is that if you and I know this, you know that the good guys know this as well. And that's kind of, I just feel like we're helping you guys and ourselves stay a step ahead of the rest of the crowd. We're getting a peek under the tent of what they already know. So anyway, on to our next one. So we went over Operation Lock, and that it was an effort by the WWF and NATO and apartheid South Africa and others to hire British security firm KAS that was manned with SAS officers under the guise of tracking down the wild game people. Instead, they were basically training people to destabilize their neighbors. And obviously, we know that the main goal of all of this is the strategy of tension, because the strategy of tension allows you to destabilize these governments in order to be able to then have a justification to go in and coup them. You isolate them, you call them a communist, blah, blah, blah. Seems to me that if they were, and I said this yesterday, and I keep coming back to this. I've thought about this like 4 or 5 times today. If these people were so bad, you wouldn't have to have an external country come in and kill them. Their own people would run them out of office. So the only legitimate explanation that you can have for a foreign government halfway around the world to come in and knock a guy out, like kill him, boil him in acid, is because he's actually good for the people, and the people wouldn't rise up because he represents them. You have no other reason why you would take him out. He doesn't represent you, he represents them. And we just saw this happen. This is exactly what they did to Donald Trump. So anybody that thinks this is crazy, you are living it. Look around. Okay.
And these aren't one-off situations.
No.
This is repeatedly done over and over and over again. And they get caught over and over. But the people who are catching them or who are in charge of surveilling them are the same ones that are involved in the operation itself.
And this and this is so critical, because if for no other reason, and there were plenty of other reasons, but if for no other reason, you've got apartheid South Africa going to all of its neighbors and screwing everything up. And one of the main stated reasons is because it made them look better. Look how stable we are. We're running our government. We're in control. It's a stereotypical, we've got, and I hate to keep coming back to race, but these guys are all about race. You've got these minority whites in South Africa managing this large plantation of blacks in South Africa, and they are the epitome of stability, where all of these others that are ran by black. Could you imagine, just go back 250 years or whatever, 200 years to the Civil War, and have a plantation that is awful, and you've got a white owner that says, yeah, there's a plantation down the road and there's one over there. They're black. They're both black owned, and they're awful, and they're unstable. And every night that the white guy's going over there and basically undermining those guys, and they're killing their slaves and they're killing their animals. And then during the day, he sits over there and goes, yeah, that's really a shame. They're very destabilized. They must not do a very good job of managing their shit. That's literally what we're doing country by country in the southern part of Africa right now during the story. Not like right now, but as part of this story, that's kind of the mindset of these people. Well, if I do all of this shit at night and nobody sees me doing it, then I can use that as an excuse to make myself look better, even though I'm biologically experimenting on blacks in South Africa and doing all this other shit, and there's no accountability. I look so much better than that guy next door because I'm screwing him up every night. That's kind of what's going on. Not kind of. That's exactly what's going on. But given all of that, The WWF is sending millions of dollars to South Africa for their quote unquote national park system, not to their neighbors that need it, to South Africa. An investigating judge found witnesses saying that warehouses at these locations had all kinds of, and not just elephants and rhino parts. There were all kinds of other elephants in there, or not elephants, all kinds of other animals in there. The judge looked into the secret WWF Gladio style paramilitary units and found the guy we talked about, Mike Richards, and newspapers began writing about the paramilitary units and the animals getting slaughtered. And they were actually saying that it was being done by South Africa. And let's see, I gave just a little bit more of a summary. Professor Stephen Ellis wrote the newsletter Africa Confidential in 1990. He said, I don't want to name the name of the source, but at no time did the WWF ever contest the authenticity of the documents. Their contents make clear that Bernhard had hatched the idea together with South Africa WWF functionary John Hanks. John Hanks was the WWF chief in charge of Africa. Like, he was the specialty guy on their staff at the international office in charge of all of Africa. Two of them hired that KAS organization, and the WWF tried to play all of this down like that was just a normal thing that you do, engage in paramilitary capability because you're an NGO about animals. Said no one ever. And let's see. I don't know if we actually talked about the location where the WWF is. The name of the city is Gland, Gland, Switzerland. Kind of a very interesting place too. And let's see, Bernhard and John Hanks did in fact end up taking full responsibility in order to exonerate the WWF International because they didn't want that to be tarnished. But the truth is that the leadership of the WWF International was involved in the planning the entire time for all of that paramilitary stuff. So who was Craig Williamson? The guy that infiltrated Operation Lock, just your average spy and assassin for the government of South Africa. Craig Williamson befriended a guy by the name of Lars Eriksson, who was the director of the International University Exchange Fund in Geneva, right down the road from Gland. And Lars Eriksson hired Craig Williamson, the South African CIA guy, as his deputy director. They awarded scholarships to African students. He was thus able to infiltrate all of the organizations in Southern Africa that were opposed to South Africa. So that's a little confusing. So basically, he got on this international committee so that he could infiltrate under the guise of awarding scholarships to these young college students that may be rabble rousers and not like South Africa. So he's a spy. He's a CIA agent for South Africa, their CIA version. And this guy, so obviously you see how insidious this stuff is. Okay, so he was able to infiltrate. Oh, and because there's Sweden in every story, he was able to make high-level contacts in Sweden because Sweden provided the funding for this scholarship program. So Williamson, the spy, was networking through Prime Minister Olof Palme's office in Stockholm and put him in touch with a number of Palme's close associates, including Pan Am Flight 301 victim Bernd Carlson, who had become Secretary General of the Socialist International in 1976 and was based in London until 83. In 1981, Williamson recruited the woman who would become South Africa's best known female spy ever. Her name was Olivia Forsyth. So these guys are basically CIA agents. They're going throughout the governments, like in Sweden. And Olof Palme, for those of you who don't remember, he was assassinated in a CIA plot, along with the guy, Dag. He's got one of those really long Swedish last names. And that guy was the secretary of the UN on his way to negotiate a peace settlement for Lumumba. Or the Congo, more specifically. So the fact that this guy is hanging around with Olof Palme should give everybody pause, because he ends up getting assassinated. Interestingly, Bernd Carlson had already had someone try to kill him in a plane incident. And that's how they killed the UN Secretary General, too. So Bernd Carlson, who ends up getting killed on Flight 301, had already been tried to be taken out in a plane crash. He was succeeding on bringing peace to the Middle East and was calling for Namibia's freedom and to ending apartheid. So he's like anti-everybody as far as these guys are concerned. He would have definitely been on a hit list. Let's see. Williamson recruited Olivia Forsyth is interesting because she was a spy for South African, and she posed not only as a student, but as a reporter. Now, keep this in mind because this is going to be very important. Every time that you hear a reporter has been arrested overseas and accused of being a spy, I would say there's a 99.9% chance they were a spy, because all of these people, that's like their go-to choice of jobs when they're undercover is a reporter, because it gives you access to everything and everybody. Okay. So she basically began infiltrating all of the people and groups that were opposing colonialism. So now she's already graduated from college. She's back in college, like 21 Jump Street, pretending to be a reporter, and infiltrating just like he was doing at the WWF headquarters. Her buddy, her recruiter, she's infiltrating all of the anti-colonialist groups throughout South Africa and Southern Africa. Let's see. And just for a little bit more information in the thread that I did, I put her profile in there. So clearly we're dealing with a Gladio-World operation by South Africans' version of the CIA. But there's more. General Secretary of the WWF, South Africa's name was called Frans Strobel. And he said to Prince Phillips, who was still the WWF international president at the time, quote, let's see. Oh, hold on. That's not a quote. Strobel had personally introduced the commanders of Operation Lock to the officers of South African secret police and had participated from day one in the planning and paramilitary activities. In January of 1990, a letter to Prince Philip, Strobel reveals that he had briefed the WWF International General Secretary Charles de Gaulle on Operation Lock. And so in years later, both Prince Bernhard and Prince Philip will try to say they didn't know anything about this. There's letters between them that says that they knew everything about it. But here's where we get to the good part. Prince Bernhard takes 2 paintings that belongs to his wife, the Queen, in Netherlands, and he sells them at auction. Then he donates the money to the WWF, and he used that money to basically pay the KAS security company commando unit. So he's money laundering. That's what I just told you. Prince Bernhard is money laundering. Not only did Sir David Sterling found the KAS company, he was funding some of Operation Lock as well. So he has a very interesting background too. So clearly you see that Sterling was a Gladio operator as well. Former South African Secret Service operators testified for Dowling that mercenaries deployed by the WWF were not only interested in game poachers, their commanders offered support to the South African CIA, basically. And its fight against the African National Congress, which is the black people that basically wanted to get rid of a apartheid system. The original South African witness statements were locked up in the archives, but Renee Zwaap, ZWAAP, was able to draw on transcripts that he had made in interviews. The KAS mercenaries used the Kruger National Park, and we talked about that. Officially, they also had at that park a prison and an execution squad. And it is said that they murdered over 6,000 opponents of the apartheid regime in South Africa. Of the anti-apartheid. Sorry about that. The top brass of the war crimes committed by the KAS mercenaries under the pretext of nature conservatories, after all high-ranking WWF functionaries were among the management of the Kruger Park. So basically, they actually had WWF employees on staff at the Kruger National Park while they had a secret prison there and while they had paramilitary training camps there. So there's no way they didn't know about what was going on. Special units, let's see. So they launched some of their raids from there because this particular park was located along the border. And let's see, Operation Lock invited a female British Army specialist that specialized in chemical and biological warfare to come to South Africa to help them. While Kevin was putting the finishing touches on his film, he begins having death threats. Prince Philip's pronounced that publishing the film would compromise national security. Finally, in 2011, WWF leadership allowed access to its archives for its 50th anniversary of the organization. There is a chapter called Operation Lock in that archive, where the historian admits that according to letters and documents, not only had South African WWF members and Prince Bernhard been involved in undercover operations, so too had WWF International President Prince Phillips as far back as 1989. The entire project vanished after one airing. The WWF just brushed it off as saying, that was just neo-colonialism. That's all gone. No big deal. Move on. Ouch. The WWF people like Chris Weaver, who was the WWF point of contact for Nambia, was had it integrated the entire community into the WWF plan, so no more neo-colonialism. However, you know, the people that got moved twice from the Serengeti and then from the volcano. I don't know about you, but I think it smacks of neo-colonialism when you kick someone out of their homeland and then you take your eco-friendly tourist to their new crappy village that you made them move into at gunpoint and make them dance for the people there for tips. I think that smacks of neo-colonialism. It may just be me, and I may just be old-fashioned, but I'm saying they're still doing the whole colonialism thing. So I want to use an example. Batwa Pygmy tribe in Uganda. The WWF threw them off their land, much like they did the other people. They made it into a national park, just like they did the other people. A report from 2011, yeah, this isn't like 80s and 90s. 2011 said, like other cases where national parks had been established under the guidance of WWF and external forces, the indigenous population had lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years in a sustainable way, and they had been evicted from the forest. Therefore, they had been given their land had been given to basically foreign investors or the WWF. Tourism is big business, as is the fees for hunting. And like I told you yesterday, I actually looked up several of the hunts. I mean, they start at $11,000. So under the cloak of conservatism, the investors want, quote unquote, their forest for themselves, and they don't want any pygmies in it. German Dr. Arnold Groh, G-R-O-H, wrote a report, and here's a quote. He described the ecotourism kickstart by the WWF as insensitive. It stormed into the pygmy villages like an invasion, destroying the cultural identity of the tribes. He said that the WWF had a fundamental problem with indigenous people. Quote, institutions such as the WWF are at least partially responsible for the eradication of indigenous cultures because they often force evictions on the grounds of nature conservation. And it is to the locals' demise because they can't survive without their forest. And especially this particular group, because they were there for protection against a majority tribe that were like 2 to 3 feet taller than them. They had been exposed for much of their cultural heritage. So they had some very interior areas in this forest carved out for them, and that's where they lived. And as Bridget said quite accurately, they lived off the land. They didn't go anywhere. They lived in this forest. So it would literally be like putting people out homeless on the streets, like they kind of do here. I observed this is continuing this guy's quote. I observed the fate of the Batwa from close quarters. After they lost their forest, the members of the tribe fell into a deep depression. They started to get drunk in the afternoon and take drugs. See, they're feeding the CIA's drug habit too. The desperation was palatable in all the villages that they visited. The Uganda government finally granted them permission to hunt, but only on the peripheral of their former forest home. They are now only allowed to go in 2 kilometers into the forest. The core is reserved for tourists and guerrillas, for which the tourists pay to see. The WWF had concluded a study showing that Batwa could be retrained to be farmers. You know, like they told us that we could learn how to program. Yeah, same stuff. The idea was divorced from reality. There's no agricultural land around there anywhere left to farm. The Batu, a much larger size human and majority in Uganda, treat the Batwa as second-class citizens. They are paid lower wages, and they are oftentimes raped by the Bantu. It was estimated that 80% of all Batwa women had been raped at least once in their life. Their children are born much larger than their mother, which allows those children to be pointed out and ridiculed by the rest of the tribe as not fitting in, which just leads to further deterioration of their culture. And so keep in mind how we started this whole story. You've got a bunch of eugenicists that's in charge of this entire operation. Do you see what they're doing? They are eliminating all of our culture. That's what all of this open border bullshit is. Because they have done significant studies that say if you allow people to stay in their culture, they will fight to the death to maintain that culture. But if you can destroy their culture, homogenize them across an entire group of cultures, that placates them. They no longer have that cultural identity, and they don't have the will to fight to defend it. We are in the middle of a eugenesis experiment. That's what's going on. A eugenics experiment. And you can see it play out right here in a microscopic version in Africa. You can see in a petri dish what is going on in the entire world now. They have perfected this, and bad on us for not standing up for these people when they were doing it to them. Because now, just like with Hitler, they will come for you too. They're knocking at our door.
And that can't be stressed strong enough. I mean, you're dead on. They've never really hidden in the shadow. We just never looked.
Well, I'm going to kind of push back a little bit on that. They did hide it because of propaganda. Just like we were talking about these reports, you know, the guy makes the movie, it shows one time, and then it's national security, so that it's locked away forever or destroyed. That report goes from 206 pages to 9. They did a damn good job of hiding a lot of this information from us. And this all went on, for the most part, in times where we didn't have the internet. And
true.
So now there's no excuse for it. And back then there were alternative news sources like our friend May, but the CIA successfully marginalized those people by calling them names. So anyway, we know now, and that's the important part. So the WWF website speaks glowingly of the good deeds for the Batwas. So they're taking credit for helping these people that they've totally destroyed. They refer to Batwa's forest as impenetrable, except an entire culture lived inside of that forest you can't get into, and you're taking tourists into it to see orangutans. So I'm going to go ahead and say bullshit. The WWF touts Batwa's ability to diversify their income as the nice way of saying the military at WWF's insistence kicked the indigenous people off their lands so that they had to find another way. You see, that's why they need a PR firm, guys, because they're doing some really awful shit and they got to figure out how to wrap that shit in a nice smelling towel. These PR people are criminals, but they do a damn good job of rewriting shit to make it look like a rose. The eco-tourists are driven into these people's new villages, and they too are encouraged to dance for the eco-tourist people. And some of the elders said that all of the new generation are losing all of their skills that the former generations had, like basket weaving and stuff like that, because they don't have access to any of the materials anymore because they were all in the forest. So these people are going to be completely destroyed culturally, well, they have been, because every skill that they knew, all were based on being in the forest. And they made a good living at these homemade baskets and all kinds of other stuff that they created out of the material inside of the forest. The WWF has granted a few people a single day a year to go back into the interior of the woods to gather medicinal plants for the entire village for the entire year. I don't know about you guys, but every time I read this kind of shit, I get so pissed off. These fuckers are telling these people you get 1 day to go in and get your shit. I mean, what the hell? Oh my God.
We're only allowed 2 weeks to take animals off our own property. Deer season. I mean, and really, if you step back, you can see how they have conditioned us to accept this.
Yeah, absolutely. The WWF USA, our branch of it, organizes tours through this former pygmy park. It's called the Great African Primate Expedition. And that's the one that I was looking up that cost $11,000 just to start. That's the nuts and bolts one. And the guy that basically Dr. Groh that we talked about before, quote, "It's not about protecting the animals. It's about using them to do business. If the WWF really wanted to conserve nature, they would have to ensure that the Batwa was able to return to their forest. For thousands of years, they have maintained the balance among species," unquote. It wasn't the Batwa that decimated the wildlife. That has been done by the ecotourism hunters who don't live there, don't care about it, and destroy the forest. In Berlin, you can see a billboard with a mother elephant and a baby, and it says, "Born to live, €5 will give him a habitat in Africa. The small print said that Africa location was Kavango, Zambezi. Trans-Frontier Conservation Area is called Kaza, K-A-Z-A. Kaza is a collection of 36 national parks and reserves in Zimbabwe, Angola, Botswana, Zambia, and they make a giant network. So wait. I thought we had stopped colonialism. Did we just reinstate colonialism in the form of a national park? Yes, we did. The WWF currently invests $2.7 million a year in this project. They tout it as saving elephants. They say that they're the only chance, the WWF, that the elephants have as survival, after they killed 1 million of them using landmines. And the WWF promote this effort as fighting poverty because the residents of the area would have a share in the proceeds of the quote unquote sustainable use of animals and plants, unquote. What it fails to tell the donors is that the use of the animals basically means shooting them in ecotourism. It wasn't until this began that the elephant became endangered. What they are not telling you is that the elephant population wasn't too small, needing protecting. It was actually too big. The main problem faced by the nations involved was how to reduce the elephant numbers to fit within the desired park area. They didn't want the animals threatening the food, vegetation, and destroying quote-unquote farmers' fields, because those farmer fields were the big companies. Who are those farmers? Well, just look around at the international syndicate that brings in food internationally. Nearly all of the participants were planning to introduce elephant hunting as an industry and the reintroduction of the legal trade in the products of sustainable stock of elephants and other animals could be an important basis for investment in this project for WWF and their investors. The WWF prefers not to confront its donors with such profane business straight talk. The WWF is very much aware of this because there are numerous eco-tourism hunting safaris set up just for them. Many of the WWF sponsors participate in them. The national park area is co-financed by the WWF. Shooting permits that the WWF financially benefit from are available for lions, elephants, leopards, giraffes, buffaloes, crocodiles, and rhinoceroses. Many companies even take shooting parties out with bloodhounds to shoot the leopards. So you can see they have made money off the animals, they make money off the hotels, and they've destroyed the people. This is the legacy of the WWF. Starting tomorrow evening, we are going to go into the country by country. We're going to kind of dig into the whole salmon harvesting part. We're going to talk about rubber trees in Indonesia. Or sorry, not rubber trees in Indonesia. Rubber trees were in India. We're going to talk about palm oil trees in Indonesia. It's hideous. We're going to name names. We're going to name names of companies. So we're going to start doing that tomorrow night on Frogger's Show at 8. And then at 7 o'clock, Tuesday through Friday, we're going to finish this segment. And then we're going to, once we get done with Panda Leaks, we're going to go throughout Africa and kind of do our normal country by country look at all of the different coups that have occurred in some of the different countries that we haven't done already. So that's kind of our schedule. And Bridget, if you wouldn't mind updating our thing on my profile.
Yes, ma'am.
that has that new schedule, and we'll probably stick with that because we're going to do Frog's show with him on Monday again. So on a routine basis. Thanks for having us back, Frogger.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
Welcome home. I missed you.
Yeah. And so that's going to probably be as long as everything works out for everybody. And we can add some other shows in, but that's going to basically be our schedule for the next few weeks. So we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions that anybody might have.
It looks like Carrie Machete or whatever requested a mic. So go ahead, Carrie Machete.
Yeah, I did. It's Carrie Machete. It's like French. Anyway, and some people call me Kari, like car plus I, which I like. Come on, George. So I just wanted to address the thing of we didn't know this was happening in South Africa. And there was a lot of knowledge about what was happening in South Africa, like the apartheid and heads of state there, you know, like the cardinal. What was the cardinal's name? I can't remember his name.
Well, I don't think she didn't. Yeah, I don't think she meant that we didn't know what was going on in South Africa. She meant generally about what the WWF was doing.
Right. And again, talking more to the public at large.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. That there were these pygmies, and I just wanted to say that is happening right now in Palestine, and that's been happening for a century. This exact thing that you're talking about. No cover of WEF, cover of UN. The UN has totally blanketed that whole operation. And I lived in the area. I know a lot more about it than maybe the average Joe, but we're in the middle of this right now. And also in America, like what the woman was talking about yesterday was so beautiful. She was talking about the horses and what they're doing to the farmers in terms of water. I mean, it's really getting, and they're coming for us, man, in the same exact way. And what you were saying about that we're, you know, playing football with some linebackers and we don't even know it.
Yeah, we're not even on the field.
Yeah. I just, it's just really close to my heart, the Palestinian, the genocide of the Palestinians. And just for the people that maybe don't know why it's happening.
Hey, Carrie, we're not going to talk about that on here because that's not the subject.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we don't allow people to slide the conversation.
It's the same things, though. It's all well, that's why and you're right, and that's why we're doing it country by country by country.
Oh, I'm
sorry. Showing how
I didn't mean to do that.
Oh no, that's why we're kind of trying.
I just wanted to say. Okay, Sally, go ahead.
I was just letting you know that I translated that video that you want translated.
Okay, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And yes, I have not. I was preparing for the show, so I haven't read it yet. But yeah, I saw that you had gotten it done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you knew that it was there. I just hadn't seen anything on it, so just making sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. What else we got?
So when you asked me, I just want to say you asked me earlier about my feedback of the shoe yesterday. it was the Eric Prince connection that kind of, surprised me. As I had time to get done going over, crunching all these numbers, that was the thing that I noticed. And no one should work on a Sunday. Good God.
Yeah, I guess, and on one hand, I guess you can't be at all surprised. That's what he does for a living. He is the epitome of Operation Gladio. So I guess you really couldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't believe their talking points. So the fact that he gets on a podcast and regurgitates CIA talking points used to coup governments should not surprise us at all, because that's where he's made his living. Go ahead, Bridget.
We have a question from over on our Rumble stream from Rosie0254. She said, how do we stop this mess?
So, Rosie, I actually think that the stopping of it is actually happening, because we talk often about the takedowns that has happened since 2017 of this network. And I'm just going to give you one example, but I think it kind of encompasses many. There was a company that started back in like the 1920s and 30s. This company had to do with encryption. And a lot of people's heard me tell this story, but it is fundamental to understanding that everything has changed in the last 8 years. Everything has changed. Not maybe at this speed at which we would like, but it's changed. So this company was eventually named Crypto AG. This company was sold to over 100 countries. The CIA, when it came about in 1948, and before that, the State Department, and eventually the German version of the CIA, the BND, bought this company from the man that had basically been working for the CIA for decades before that. The guy was getting old, and they were afraid his son, who was way more liberal than his dad, wasn't going to honor the agreement with the CIA. So the CIA and the BND went in together and bought it 50-50. And there was like 10% left for another company that was kind of doing the phone lines part of it, which had ties to Ericsson, by the way. And so this company had a back door. And the CIA and the BND could hear and see and read every State Department cable from every embassy of every country in the world that bought the software. So in Chile, they had that software there. All of South America had it. There were so many people that had in South America, they had to have a server down there on the U.S. military base in order to service all of those countries. And so every time the Chilean government told Argentina government, hey, that guy that just escaped from here, he's headed your way. I want you guys to assassinate him. The CIA was listening to that. Every time the Jordan or the PLO, because they had it too, or Israel came to Camp David back in the 80s and the 70s, and they were doing all this peace stuff, the CIA was reading every single State Department level cable sent from all of their embassies to their embassies in Washington, D.C. So when you start thinking about that, the foreknowledge of our CIA tells you that they've never been surprised about a fucking thing. Nothing. You know how we were surprised at 9/11 and we were surprised at all of these international events. They've never been surprised about anything. They've known everything that has been going on forever. The whole USS Liberty. No, they weren't surprised about that at all. They were off the coast listening to those people talk. When Israel assassinated the POWs that they had that were Egyptian and buried them in a mass grave with a bulldozer, yeah, we knew all of that. because that kind of stuff was being talked over diplomatic cables back and forth to different embassies. They knew it all. Well, that company had been around, like I said, for decades, almost 100 years. Do you know when that company got destroyed? Under Trump. It was completely dismantled. So that's just one of many. I got to sneeze. Examples that I can give you that everything has changed. Again, it's not happening fast enough for us that know what's going on, but it's happening at the speed that it can for people who need to still wake up and for them not to lose their shit. So those of us who are in this group right here have to spend this time gathering the knowledge like we're doing right now so that we can be prepared to sit down with our neighbors when they start losing their shit and start finding out all this stuff. Because you guys are going to be the ones that help them make it through it, because you're going to already know. Go ahead, Stellar.
Thank you for having a space tonight. This is awesome. And I agree with you. I see a lot of things happening. And for me, like, because I see it on a different view than you guys do, because I watch the financial stuff, and things are actually moving very, very quickly on that part. So, always thought that once, because that's how their funding goes through. That's where they launder. That's how they get their powers, from the money. And as all of these things are starting to happen, and, it is really, there's a lot of things that are happening. And then the fact that you're able to have these spaces and share your knowledge and information, and we're all coming together learning, and hopefully other people, as like you said, as people are waking up to this stuff, they're going to be shocked, especially when the black swan happens. And, when that first bank in the United States crashes, and there's not another bank that's going to be able to come in and take care of it like they have been with the ones that have fallen so far. A few of them haven't had it, but the FDIC can't handle it, and the whole thing is a screwed up mess. And now learning about, or just finding it about that Fabian thing that I think I had talked about, or I've been like watching the videos and stuff. That thing literally, because it's been around for a long, long, long time.
The Fabian Society?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something that's part of this little group of like shitheads? Excuse my language.
So Stellar, back on day one, when I first did the first show with you, and Frog, the Fabian Society is where all of this came from. All of it. The Fabian Society, the British Round Table, all of it. And it goes back even further than that. But this current version was birthed out of, those were all eugenicists. Those guys were all the world planners. They're the ones, you remember when I said about them setting up the Pan-America, Pan-British Empire, Pan-Europe, Pan-Asia, all from them. All from them. They envisioned the Cecil Rhodes, all of those guys, all Oswald Mosley, yeah, all of them. That is where all of this came from.
I just put a video that I saw from on YouTube and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like step in toe, or whatever you want to say, with everything that you guys are talking about, like, now the operations and stuff like that are, but wow.
Yeah.
When I saw that, and I remembered you saying that, I was pretty, and I think you said their name back then.
Yeah.
But I don't, because I was so new to this. I mean, this
I know.
was like the very beginning.
But Stellar,
Like,
you kind of just made my whole point, because that's what Bridget, Liza, and I've had to do. We learned stuff a year ago that today I'm having to go back and relook at it. And I told you guys, my favorite story is having just read like 2 years ago, Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail, both volumes. And then once I stumbled across Operation Gladio, I'm like, son of a bitch, that's what she was talking about, but she doesn't even know what the name of it is. So we went back and reviewed her entire book on my podcast, just to prove to us that that was in fact what she was saying. So we went through page by page by page that entire book, and it's all about Operation Gladio. She just didn't know what the name of it was. And so everything we've ever learned, even something that I learned 6 months ago, when I go back and look at it, I see now, because I've learned 20 other things, that it fits in a nice little, like, I found one today that was just, it'll rock your socks. And yeah, so the one that I posted about William Buckley, I knew all of that crap. I just hadn't put the pieces together, like the Boys Town part of it. That those guys were all pedophiles. So again, you go back and you look at all that stuff a second time. Those people that were the lawyers for Nixon and Watergate, there's a whole nother piece I haven't even put out there yet. It's crazy.
It really is, because like, you know, like that other guy that was in the labor union or whatever, the Labor Party in England, you know, he was a wackadoo. And then this one now, I mean, he's like very open about his, you know, like this whole Fabian thing, and then seeing what they're doing with the country. I mean, my heart's going out. And then what happened in France, my heart is going out, because I have friends calling me saying, oh God, please, please, you guys need to get, you know, control of everything. Please, we need help. We need to be saved. I have friends in Europe that are sending me messages like this now. And
Stellar. You know what you tell them? Put on their big boy britches and go take care of it yourself. We're not saving you again.
That's what I pretty much said. You know, I go, you guys need to get together and do your, you know, France first or UK first. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bridget.
I got a couple of messages from over on our Rumble feed and a question. Let's see. Stan Stewart said Chevron being shut down and petrodollar dying both give me hope. Cousin It said the UK just voted in the 140 delegates from the Fabian Society. And I think Stellar already stuck that up in the nest. Thank you. And they all said very much bless you for doing what you're doing. And CN Stewart said, I wonder if they have stats on how many Dutch, French, Spanish, and other locations have been changed back to Native African names.
I don't know. That's a new one on me. Yeah, I don't know. What you got, Benjamin?
Hi, ladies.
Hey.
Just to give it like a symbological representation what this all looks like to me on certain levels, like when I watched the movie Harry Potter and you had this big old town in London or something, and you know, you had this other city, other thing going on under the surface, behind the scenes, this magical thing going on, you know, and it seems like that's what a lot of these evil people have been doing. We're living in one world, they're living in another world, and they're controlling the levers and making all this stuff happen behind the scenes. You know, it's compartmentalization. You know, that's big in the Navy, because, you know, we're a ship, you know, we're a vessel. If we go down, we take on water, we got to be able to compartmentalize, you know, so we're on a different level as far as intelligence goes, and, you know, that the average American doesn't understand. And it's like, that's one of the things that we've dealt with. These people have been, you know, controlling the narrative, controlling the light, controlling the information. And information is one of the most important things in war. And that stuff, like with Trump's capitulation tour and all these things coming out, you know, it's a lot of things, you know, and it takes time for the truth to get out there. You know, it's it's not something like we can blame ourselves for not knowing this stuff. Like, these people have been controlling the levers. Like, it took a long time for Hillary's hit list, the Clinton hit list, to make it out into the light to the degree it did. Now you got things like P. Diddy and, you know, that all being uncovered. And then you got like one bad movie Stephen Baldwin keeps talking about that is coming out, where they're talking about things going on behind the scenes in Hollywood, you know, with all the pedophilia and things going on. You know, it's one of those things where, to me, it seems like the good guys are in control in very large part, and there's still some things that could possibly happen. You know, it's like, I've been around some evil people, and a lot of them, they're going to try to take out whoever they can with them, you know? So it's like, that's why it's important to find the good people and know who to listen to, and, you know, be out in your community and be involved in politics, or, you know, watching a poll watcher or something. Be a part of change, you know, because it's like this. There's a changing of the guard going on, it seems like to me. And we're going to get some good people in power. And once we get some good people in power, you know, we don't have money in politics. I think our country can be great, really great.
I agree, because we've been carrying the world for a long time as far as our earning capacity, our productivity capability, and it's being taken from us as quickly as we create it. So I absolutely agree with you. Go ahead, Bridget.
I wanted to second his, I love Harry Potter movies, and that was also came from Cousin Ed. And, you know, to the point of what, you know, you guys were talking about the other countries, you know, we need to encourage these other people to get active in their own countries and start these, just like you said, France first initiatives, so that because to wait for the United States, we're trying to, let's say, cut all these tentacles off, because we have done more harm than we ever did good as far as through this whole project. I can't see a whole lot of good that we accomplished in other countries, except for very few, far and few between, in small groups. And, you know, when Trump came out and said, we no longer need to be the policeman of the world, I think this is what he was talking about. I truly do. And Abe Francis One over on our Rumble channel said, I heard of a child victim testimony of Nixon at Camp Interlaken. Epstein was there too. And I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. No, I don't know anything about that.
Right.
So again, everybody, just because we have had such a rough time of getting this information out, if there's any article in the pill or up in the top that you guys want to repost on your X account, please do that. If you're over on Rumble, please give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the show. I don't know anything about their algorithms, but Bridget is my guide. She tells me that that's a very important thing to do. So I do encourage everybody to do that because we have been unmercifully messed around with in trying to get this word out. I mean, at this point, it's kind of hysterical that they're fighting so hard. It kind of is like a pat on our back as far as I'm concerned, that the information is important enough for them to even try to do that. So kudos to us, I guess. Go ahead, Sally.
That's funny. Rumble algorithm is all performance based. So sharing off platform and giving a thumbs up just helps you say, hey, people are interested in this content. So they'll push it out. And then it was ever since you were talking about the WWF, because Utah has a lot of hunting land and there's a lot of rich people that own lots of mountain land where they'll actually fence off elk and stuff like that, and they'll charge like $15,000 for a hunt, $20,000 for a hunt, and it just made me think about what you were talking about as far as Africa goes and in Utah, because I'm noticing that a lot of the stuff that they're planning on doing in the United States, they're practicing on Utah because we're just a naive group of people because of the predominant religion here, where it's a very faith-based, trusting religion. And so they're just like, oh, this person's part of our religion, they must mean well, right? So it's very, very naive of them, but I'm not knocking them. But anyway, so I tried looking up WWF stuff in Utah and what lands that they have preserved. And I guess Park City in Utah, which is where a lot of the Californians have moved to, they just won the award for competition for like green cities and stuff like that. So it's coming to every state, and it's happening here in the United States. It's just we're not aware of it because, well, they don't want us to be aware of it. I just found that interesting, and I had a really hard time finding anything on it. I have to get on a different browser when I get to my computer later because I was digging into it today.
Well, great that you are digging into it because, yeah, we definitely need to be paying attention to that. Let's see. Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. It's a sad day, really. Believe me, my friends, it's a really sad day. Here, what's happening in France, it's totally crazy. You know, the elections was 8 o'clock, and it's over. Believe me, it's over. That's what looks like when you import millions of people from other countries. And you see what happened with the election. It was the National Rally. It was first to win. It's not question. It's racist or something like that. This is bullshit, you know. But it's like 12 million people voted for the National Rally. And right now there is the communist, there is the socialist who take the power because Macron he colluded with the far left. And believe me, my friend, it's crazy what's happening in France. So you need to take care in next November about the election because if you are next, you know. But I don't think this will happen in America because the importation of millions and millions of people is looking like that. When you come into the election time, these people are going to vote, you know, and this was happening in France. And it's horrible, and I'm totally, I can explain that, not destroyed, but it's over, it's over, it's over. They will put some...
It's not over, Anthony, it's not over. Never give up. Never give up. You need to find patriots in France that are like-minded like you, that want to take your country back, just like we're doing here, just like I'm doing. You know, I thought voting was enough. Voting is not enough. It's more than that. So you've got to get people that are like-minded like you. I don't know what the procedures are in France as far as poll watching or that kind of stuff, but you need to get the people. There's more of us. There's more of you. There are more patriots that want to save France. I mean, your country, our country, you know, we've got to save our own countries. And that's what it comes down to. And we are the ones that have the power. We are the ones that are going to be making the laws through the people, the vessels of the people that we will get elected in there. But until people start taking control of their own community, their own countries, you know, that's what we have to do. And I know that you're active on social media and you have a lot of friends in France that you guys could start putting things together. Do little, I mean, like, there's a man named White Hot used to come in all the time, and he used to always say, you know, congregate in the churches, in the bars, in your homes. But the people need to come together, and don't ever give up, because it's all a game. It's all a game. But the veil is being lifted, but we have to take control of our own stuff. You need to find people in France that are like-minded with you. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. it's okay, Sharon, but you know the problem is now there is too much people have come here in between 2017. You remember when I met you many years ago in south of France? It was possible to doing something, but believe me, my dear, you are always right. But now the problem is there is
you told me before that I was crazy, Anthony, but I'm not crazy. And I'm going to tell you right now, with everything that's going on, remember I told you about BRICS and all these different countries that are going to be doing reevaluations. Every country on this planet has its own wealth within its own resources. So in my opinion, this is only my opinion, a lot of the invaders, whether they're here in the United States or even, you know, throughout Europe and everywhere else that they're doing this to, because it is happening all over. But as each of these countries, so Zimbabwe did doing their revaluation. There's another country, and Colonel Towner mentioned this country in Africa already. It's one of those countries like that starts with a Z. It's Zambia or something like that. I think that they have just now stated that they're going through their reevaluations. If people use the U.S. dollar over there, because it's illegal now, which means no more Western influence. They're within their own systems. And they're going to give out wallets. What do you call? You know how I have been trying to get you to start these stupid ISO wallets. Okay, so those wallets, they're giving wallets out to their own national countries, and they're putting them in because there's so much wealth. So for them to be able to gain control of money and their own wealth, they have to go home. And that's what I see going on. A lot of these people are going to go home because as our countries, like your country has fallen, you say, but it hasn't. Right now, you need to be people together that are like-minded like you and start figuring out a plan to take your country back, because just like the United States dollar, you know, our US dollar, just like the euro, they're all going to freaking crash. And when that happens, you know, that's when, you know, that means the governments, all of that stuff is getting ready for its reset. And you guys have to be ready. And it is going to be happening. But you guys have to be prepared. So you've got to get organized and get people like you want to fix your country. Future generations as well, get these evil Satanists out of there.
It's true. I will finish with this word. You are right. But believe me, the only hope right now is Donald.
Okay.
He will save everybody, you know, but now in France, it's a big mess. And I send you all hugs to France, to everybody, and keep the fighting on and never surrender, because here it's...
Anthony, did you think that... Okay, I know that you know that your country was stolen, just like... Do you think that in 2020, if all of us gave up because Biden stole the election, people stole the election, inputted him in there, if we would have all given up, we wouldn't be here today. So that's what I'm saying. Don't give up, because the fight is strong. It is so strong, and we are so close. We are all winning, not just here in the United States. We're all winning. Think of it as a wake-up disclosure about how corrupt everything is. You know, when you lose a game, you guys all play sports. I don't play sports. That's why I don't get hurt. But, you know, people play sports and stuff like that. They get an injury and, you know, they stay off of it for a short time. You know, and then they go back to work on the field or whatever it is that they do to injure themselves some more. I don't understand that concept, but what?
Okay, Stellar.
Not give up.
We're like at the 2 hour point, and we got like 5 hands. So let me ask these people who have their hands up, and then we're gonna call it a night. Go ahead, Sonia.
Sally, I can't message you, but if you want the files on what you were talking about as far as the state of Utah and the LDS church and how they're doing the gaming situation down there, I have the file on it, but I can't message it to you. So I don't know how to do that because it says that I'm not a verified account.
Oh, I was just trying to see. So Jonia that's talking to me?
Yes, SJONIA.
I'll follow you back right now.
Okay, thank you, honey.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Marie 17, go.
Hey, I just wanted to talk to you guys and tell you this is great. I'm going to go back and listen to the beginning of the space because yesterday's space really hit home for me in a lot of ways. And Sally, as far as Utah goes, there's another reason that they're leaching all of this stuff from California. And it is that 330,000 people fled California in the past year. And they moved into Idaho, they moved into Nevada, they moved into Utah. So it gives this perception, this like mirror perception that they brought the voting to you from the exact same rules that they ran from. And so it's so important for you guys to push the vote. You guys, I mean, that is probably the best thing you guys can.
Who was that?
I'm not sure.
Details, Mike. Go ahead, Mary.
So Sally, if you want to take this head on as far as that Green New Deal and everything you're seeing kind of leach over, you've got to get your constituents together in your county, in your state. You've got to do exactly what we're saying. If everybody keeps in mind that we know the Green New Deal is poison, we know that. It was one of the biggest things that Trump talked about. If we know how the deep state, the cabal, the pharmaceutical cabal, insurance cabal, and spaces, and in her threads, if we know how they work and we learn their pattern, you can see it in the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is not the end all. It's not what they're hoping for. It's a method that will drop us to our knees so that we will accept what they're hoping for. And they are hoping to go nuclear. We went from 1950s, be afraid of this, to don't talk about it, to accept it as a way of the future. For medicine, it's even the #1 selling stocks on the stock market right now. The Green New Deal would have been their path to break us by inconsistent power sources, to usher us towards that. The other reason I think they target Utah is you guys were one of the first uranium mines in this country. You were one of the first people that were turning natural uranium, which is vastly different, to man-made uranium through these mining processes. So if you look at the early Mormons that mined those mines and the early Native Americans, you guys could well take this fight and you could end the problem with going nuclear for us. We can't go the way they want us to go because there's so much documented proof of what they did to you people. There's so much proof there. So don't give up. Know that they're trying to play this game because they followed the censors, that the mass majority, and they're playing this game thinking they can screw with your voting algorithms.
Can I just respond to that real quick? I won't make it long.
Sure.
No, I do know exactly what you're saying about, and our governor, we just had a big, huge sham. Governor Cox squirmed his way on the ballot. So no, yeah, I have actually in direct contact with the person that is running for governor who's disputing the gubernatorial race. So yeah, anything that you guys can send me, because I will do videos, post about it. So just send it my direction, please.
Thanks. Zamba, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Colonel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Yeah, great space. And again, thanks for bringing to light, I think, a very undocumented but long history of links between basically the weaponization and militarization of conservation. I guess on the back of that, I wanted to make my first just disclaimer, because I think we shouldn't try to at least not throw the bad light of what people like the WWF and the likes of the cabal that you are talking about are doing to people who are genuinely concerned about conservation. Again, what we have here is efforts to weaponize good intentions. And I think to that point, I posted in the chat, I think you mentioned Whitney Webb earlier and her One Nation Under Blackmail.
Mm-hmm.
She did an article for Unlimited Hangout called Debt from Above.
Yep.
And I really would try and, get everyone to have a look at that, because for me, this is really the sort of evolution of where this sort of thing is going. The links between surveillance and conservation and Green New Deal and basically all these sort of programs that are trying to weaponize the sort of environmental, concerns or issues, essentially for ulterior and nefarious purposes. And what she's highlighting in this, I think, pivotal investigation is what's happening under the GREEN program. It's GREEN spelled Green Plus. That stands for Government Reduction of Emissions for Environmental and Net Plus Gain. And what it is basically a number of countries. It's now being, since 2002, piloted in South America, I think mainly Argentina, but also other countries in the global south, that are basically being forced into the carbon credit market. And if anyone knows anything about carbon credits, it's been this massive scammy process for countries to quote unquote reduce their carbon emissions by buying into these credits that basically turned out to be, complete phonies, right? It was like anyone could claim a carbon credit by saying, hey, look, I've got some forest in my country, or I've grown some trees over here, or look at this, river I've done something to. And that's, it was a completely, it started off with this kind of idea of how to basically, reduce carbon emissions under the Kyoto Protocol in the 90s. Anyway, long story. Anyone who wants to look up carbon credits, do that. But anyway, this is its basically next phase. And it's a means of getting countries to onboard carbon credit schemes through satellite surveillance, low orbit satellite surveillance, and basically plug into these kind of global smart grids, right? And which is all linked to blockchain, new technology, you name it. But it's under this program called Green Plus, the Government Reduction for Emissions and Environmental Net Gain. It was basically connected to satellite companies that have well-recorded connections to American intel agencies. And, the key to the program, one of those companies is Satellogic, if anyone wants to look at that. And that's closely tied to Peter Thiel's Palantir, as well as SpaceX. And the whole sort of logic behind that is, constant monitoring of green areas or conservation areas to supposedly measure how they're being, managed, how they're being protected.
Zamba, did you have a question?
Well, I'm just laying that out there. And my question, if you want, to the panel at all is looking, because I think we're looking into a lot of the past of how these programs have sort of evolved, and I think this is a major one of looking into the future of how this is going to evolve going forward. So anyway, yeah, I'll leave it there. But anyone wants to look at that article, it's in the chat.
Zamba, you kind of brought this whole thing full circle, so thank you for doing that. Where I started off was at the beginning of this is if you look at the old version of colonialism and you were to put a 2024 face on it, it would be exactly what you just said. That is exactly what they've done. So if you go through, and I've read several articles about what they're doing in South America with this green garbage, and it is a modern way of yoking an oxen. It is the exact same thing that they're doing in Africa with the nature preserves, with the WWF. In each and every case, it doesn't matter which way. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. It doesn't matter if they're talking about through the WEF, through the or the WHO, through the carbon credits, through this, through that. It's all the same thing. This is a matrix to ensnare us and control us. It is modern day colonialism for all of us. We're just all on the plantation now. It isn't. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree. That's absolutely it, and
Yeah.
especially the way that it's again weaponizing the
Yes.
a debt-based model.
Yes.
On top of now these kind of new tech creations like blockchain. I work a lot in sort of blockchain space and all of that. I'm very familiar with how a lot of that works. And you have this kind of now whole idea of like, oh, we need that, but like, you know, we need it green. And so,
yeah.
But behind all of these so-called quote unquote good intentions is really a very dubious, obscure way of agenda of economic domination. Basically.
Yeah, none of it's good intentions. Yeah, none of it's good intentions. It's all evil. They just try to put a happy face on evil. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
a panda.
Or a panda. Smart ass. All right, Jeff, go. Jeff's going to be close it in. He's going to be our last hand for tonight. Go ahead, Jeff.
You know, Colonel Towner, I just wanted to tell you thank you and Bridget and Trump Ribbit. And I don't see Cousin Ed, but thank you guys for having this space again. And I was thinking about what you said the other night with part one about the WWF being a scam front, like a lot of these climate scams around the world are just ways to fleece the people of cash. But I wanted to mention that we can make a difference. One person can be united to 1,000 to unite to a million. And Teddy Roosevelt set aside more land than all presidents combined for all of our national parks and wildlife reserves. And I think that another foreign name is Lady Bird Johnson, who did all the horticulture on all the highways in the United States with flowers. And those are true people that care about the climate. It's not these three-letter or.
Jeff, don't get me on my Teddy Roosevelt horse, please. Don't get me on him. No.
No, I was just saying that you've done more to help us come together.
Yeah.
I think that I don't want to agree with you that one person can't make a difference and one person can. If we just come together as a team and work together, I think that we can get to the results that we're trying to get, which is to break the corruption of the black syndicate, which is all of them, all of the above.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right, Bridget, last word.
Just one of these days, I need to make a post on all the missing people that have gone missing from our national parks and state parks, as well as from the actual Land Parks Association website about how they have done many OSS training camps and CIA training camps inside of our national state parks. Now rethink all of those national and state parks that are set aside for conservation.
Yeah.
Colonel, could I say one thing real quick? I think you forgot me.
I don't see your hand, Billy, but go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell y'all, I don't know if y'all know this. I'm not somebody that's on social media. I've just living my little solitary life over here in Mississippi. And I was a lifelong liberal Democrat. I'm talking about Black Lives Matter bumper sticker, pussy hat, the whole 9 yards. I've never voted for a Republican my whole life until this whole COVID mess came up. And long story short, I'm not a fool. You know, I was a lawyer for 15 years. I've always considered myself to be a scholar and intellect, right? And you lie to me 3 or 4 times to my face, right? Then I start to say, well, I don't think I believe you anymore. What else? So I began to search for the truth a couple of years ago. I was also vax injured. And I'm ashamed to say that I was haughty. Like, I'm an upper middle class white woman. I go to the country club, whatever. And I just, was sure I was right, of course, right? And I was the fool. And I've had a lot of apologizing to do in my life to the MAGA people, because those were the people that were right. And the reason why they knew it before my ilk was because the system's always treated them poorly. They've never trusted it. And my point of that is to tell y'all, I've jumped in here because I was looking for the truth. And, I'm being attacked now, a MAGA person, which just totally is hysterical, right? For somebody, right? I've been like this liberal over here all these years.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, you're Miss MAGA stupid. It's like, if you had any idea how fucking wrong that was,
right?
Now I'm on board because, when you realize that everything you've ever been told is a lie, it is. Let me just tell you, that's a rough realization to come to. You think, you've been so educated and you've been so informed and you've tried to do the right thing. I was a Democrat because I wanted to help poor people, and I wanted things to be fair, and I wanted to tax the rich, right? That's why I was a Democrat. And because I wanted to do the right thing. But my point is if you can get to, if the truth can get to somebody like me and make me do a full one, my son's grown, I really wouldn't engage that much anymore, But if you can bring me back to the table and completely change my mind, then there is hope.
I agree.
Our whole country.
I agree, Billy.
So,
that's
all I had to say.
Yeah, that's an awesome testimonial.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm becoming a big Billy Joe fan. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
Because
Archie,
you're just joining the club.
Yeah. So you just described every one of my family members, every one of my neighbors, when I retired. And it took some longer than others, but I'm a pretty feisty person when it comes to the truth. And fortunately, I had enough experience from around the world to be able to come at things from 3 or 4 different angles, so I could always get them, they weren't going to be able to argue successfully with me. And at some point, most of them just threw in the towel. But I agree with you when it comes to COVID, because so many people focus on, and I mean, it was horrible. Please don't get me wrong. But sometimes the best comes from the worst. And I'm right there with you, Billy. I was never
Amen, girl.
I was never a liberal, but I can tell you that COVID, I had already started distrusting my government, but COVID changed my life from the perspective that I had been on medication for a disability for over a decade. I was medically retired from the military because of that disability. And when I I knew right away, I've taken ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine every time I've ever deployed. I knew all about what the deal was. I know what a gas mask and what a virus and all of that other crap. I knew everything that they were telling us was a lie. And so after about the 4th lie, I'm looking at my husband one day and went, they're trying to kill us. They're actually trying to kill us. Every time one of those people come on the television, they're telling people to do something that's going to kill them. And I looked at him and I'm like, my entire fucking medicine cabinet is full of shit. They're trying to kill me. And I just,
my son vaccinated, so I understand how you feel.
Yeah, I walked in there and I got everything out of the medicine cabinet and I threw it away. And I'm talking, there was morphine, codeine, and everything, because I could not walk without pain medication. And I've never taken another one. I figured it out.
Cookie kernel, no doubt.
I figured it out on how to do things naturally, and I am still working through all of it. But that was my wake-up call too, Billy. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I never thought that the country that I fought for would be trying to kill me. It is a rude awakening. We are all in the same boat if we would all just realize that.
It just is so, just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
But you got to get over that.
Yeah. And move on. And that's what I've done.
Nobody from nowhere.
Because
wherever. But I have to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to do something.
Yeah. So what I do.
Dr. Towner's right. Codeine killed my killed my father. That's correct.
Yeah. So what I did, which is what I've always done, is when somebody pisses me off, I poke back. And this is what I'm doing right now. Go ahead, Frog.
I just wanted to say thank you for what you said, Billy Joe. That's the problem. Seems like to me conservatives are more have to do research to verify their points, where liberals live in this world of confirmation bias, where they turn on, Costanza, Brian Stelter, and listen to people like them tell them what's really happening. So they believe that it's true instead of saying, I'm going to hear something, whether it's from Colonel Towner or from whoever it is, I'm going to look it up for myself so I can be confident in the way that I feel. So I think people should research themselves, and then Colonel Towner drops amazing information. And when you research it, it becomes personalized to you. That's why I speak the way that I speak. If you don't like the way I speak, great. Go look it up. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, right? But it'll make you go look for yourself. I think everybody should support each other. Everyone should follow each other and try to spread the word, because there are more of us than there are of them. But on social media, we don't have paid operatives that have the voices like leftists do. So, we all know who they are. I won't waste time. But I just want to thank you, Colonel Towner. I think your spaces are amazing. Grateful to be a part of it. I'm thankful that you do this and you share and impart much more detail than someone that goes, oh, I know what Operation Gladio is. I'm going to go look up BBC to verify my point, when it's the 80-20 rule. They'll give you some, but they don't give you the real information that you need. So,
right.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for my Gladio glasses, because once I got those, everything just jumped out and it all became so clear. It all came together. And Colonel, thank you for my Gladio glasses.
You're welcome.
Wait till you get the perfume.
Last little thing I wanted to add was from Cousin It. We all have our wake up moments, and whatever it was that sparked it or started it. And she said, then you go through, it's like the levels of
Grief.
Where she said, grief, that's it. She says you start out with you're just in shock, and then you go, and it's like you're depressed, and then you get pissed. And then all of a sudden you really start learning stuff.
And they sure messed up when they pissed off Colonel Towner, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Thank God.
Okay. Well, now that we've come full circle, we will see you tomorrow on the pond at 8:00. We will do our third installment there. And then we'll be back at 7 on Tuesday. So thank you all for being here and spending the evening with us. I really appreciate it.
Good night.
Night.